Brilliant. Oh, I can't wait to get stuck into this then, Melissa. So I think because we've titled this masterclass, what is PR and why do you need it? Let's start with that because I think there's some real myths about what PR is. And I think often when we're a small business with limited resources, we can look at PR as something that you do if you're like a massive worldwide corporate organisation. But as you and I understand, Melissa, is that actually we can do this for our businesses. So it's not about size. So let's kick off with, busting some myths here, Melissa. Can you explain what is PR and how is it different to marketing?
Okay. So if there are PR lecturers listening to this, they'll probably shudder and cringe because there's a lot of really sort of formal definitions as to what public relations is. Let's start with what marketing is, because marketing is a very broad term, but in essence, marketing is the process of promoting, selling, or distributing a product or service. It's basically moving a product from one place to the end customer. And it's about the 4 Ps, product, price, place, and promotion. So your actual product itself, how you're pricing it, your distribution channel and getting it out there, and then promotion. Now, public relations is just one part of the promotion P. It's just one tool. There's lots of different ways that you can promote your business, but PR, it also starts with a P, but it's just one of the promotion tools you can use. Now, if you were going to look for a formal definition of what public relations is, it is basically encouraging public understanding and goodwill towards a particular company and its products or services. But that sounds kind of a mouthful. What a small business needs to realize, or what PR is to them, is it's basically, you could probably summarize it as publicity more than anything, and it's getting a publication or broadcaster to talk about you in a favorable way, or it's getting other people to talk about you, whether that's face-to-face or via social media, about you in a favorable way. And lastly, if anyone is talking about you publicly in an unfavorable way, it's managing that. So it's looking after your reputation, it's building your reputation, and then managing your reputation.
Fantastic. And I love the fact that you're able to turn the broad understanding of what PR is round for making it clear about why small businesses need to work with this. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, just to clarify, I mean, when you talk about public relations in the bigger frame, I mean, you'll hear people talking about corporate branding and their livery and the way that you answer the phone in your organization. All of that comes under the banner of public relations because you are managing all those those outward parts. But basically, it's about for a small business, it's about getting publicity for your business. It's raising awareness, using tools working with the media, and then managing any negative commentary that's out there.
And in this day and age of using social media and all of the tools that are available for us, we've got blogs and we've got our websites and, all sorts of different ways that we can actually, as business owners, create interest. So why is it still important for small businesses to do PR?
So social media has enabled people to become their own publishers, basically, which is great because it means you can talk directly to your customers via Facebook or Twitter or on your blog. You don't have to rely on a journalist to write a story about you, and you don't have to pay someone for an advert. However, the reason it's so important to get some PR is because it really, really boosts your credibility. It's like if you had to liken it to, you meet up with a group of your friends and you say, I really need to get a haircut. Can anyone recommend a hairdresser? And someone goes, oh yeah, you should see my person, they're great. And you are more likely to go use that hairdresser because it's been a personal recommendation. Similarly, if you're looking to book a family holiday, and you're browsing online and you can see hundreds and hundreds of holiday options, but you just don't really know what they're actually going to be like. So then you suddenly look at the Telegraph travel pages, and they've got a roundup of the best family holidays this summer in France, for example. And you start looking at those and you think, well, that sounds great because they really, they've described it from a journalist point of view. And if the Telegraph's writing about it, it must be credible. It can't be some dodgy, thing that I might be booking, and it could be awful when I get there. So when you get a magazine or a newspaper or a radio or TV station or someone else, a website writing about you, it really helps to build your credibility and make you look far more authoritative than if you didn't. It also spreads the word about you very effectively. It's mass media, so people are going to read about you and hear about you far more quickly than just them finding your blog. It does help you protect your reputation. If there's someone writing something favorable about you, if the Telegraph has written a great piece about you and you've got a negative review on TripAdvisor, for example, it helps to counterbalance the negative. And it just generally helps you build up relationships over time. It helps you become known both amongst your end audience as well as the press that you're wanting to influence. So it's really fundamentally an awareness-building exercise, a reputation management, and a credibility-building exercise.
So in a way that we can manage our social media from ourselves, by using PR and engaging with it, it's almost like you're getting somebody else to recommend you. So as you use that word mass, didn't you? It's kind of like, our social media is our activity, it's what we do, but this is PR when you get it working for you, is actually somebody else promoting it on your behalf.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you think back to that credibility, isn't it? Well,
if you think about companies like both Microsoft and Virgin, I mean, both of those businesses were built on PR. Both of their CEOs, Bill Gates and Richard Branson, both are huge fans of PR, and Bill Gates has said he'd spend his last dollar on PR because they realize the value of someone else writing favorably about their business. It goes so much further than you writing about yourself, saying I'm awesome, or you're paying for an ad and saying look how great I am. Here's my ad. Believe what I'm saying, and people are kind of skeptical about advertising these days. Whereas you get someone else to write about you, they believe it. They think, well, it must be true because it's in the paper. And it does. There are so many small businesses that have been built off the back of PR, and they've really, I have a client that I worked with for many years, and they were a travel business, and she was a very small business, had absolutely no money for any kind of marketing. She invested all of her marketing budget with me and doing PR. And I remember we managed to get her a piece in the Telegraph for her holiday company, and it resulted in £17,000 worth of sales that week, directly attributable to that one article. Because she could blog and she could send out things to her newsletter database and whatever else, but when you have the Telegraph with its mass readership, and they read about, there's a little article about this travel company and how great it is, and people go, that looks fantastic, I need somewhere that's family-friendly for my next holiday. They go online, they see it's a great site, and off they go and they book. And, that is the kind of returns that PR can give you. It isn't guaranteed. It isn't like you're paying for an ad and you can guarantee that your piece is going to be in that paper on that day, but you're not paying for the space for a start. And when you get in, it is so much more effective than advertising. So it's just really, really a good way of building your profile and ultimately driving sales.
And I think this is a really important differentiation, isn't it? Is that the paid marketing that everybody can go and pay from various publications is very different from having the journalists actually write for their publication about your products or services.
Yeah. I mean, it is exactly like like the example I used before with the hairdresser. If you looked in the yellow pages for a hairdresser in York, you'd see a bunch of them, and how would you know what's better or different? And if they could write in their ad, we do the best haircuts in York, but you've got to take their word for it. Whereas if you saw a write-up in the York Press saying this has been rated the best hairdresser because of whatever reasons, you're going to think, well, that must be great because someone else has written about it. It really does. It is so much more credible.
So it's a little bit like having, when I'm looking for a new restaurant or somewhere like that, or a new hotel, I do go on TripAdvisor and I really do allow other people's opinions inform my decision.
Yeah.
But rather, like you said, rather than just looking at a blank list of restaurants and not understanding if it's going to be good, bad, or indifferent, that you have a fair idea that the things that people are talking about, the things that you want to experience, so you're going to kind of give it a go.
But what I do, so for example, I do exactly the same. I use TripAdvisor for a bunch of things. But if I went, for example, if I'm looking, this is topical right now because I'm trying to find a holiday for December. So I've been searching online and I've been looking everywhere for a holiday. Where do I want to go? And then I'll look at TripAdvisor and I'll see what people have written. But I don't trust everyone that's on TripAdvisor either. So maybe I have trust issues, who knows. But anyway, and then I go back and I search again on the same restaurant or hotel, and I try and find a newspaper article that's been written about them. And I will then read the journalist review, because I base what they've written in conjunction. I sort of weigh that up with the other opinions on TripAdvisor, and then think, right, well, it must be okay then. So it just adds a lot more meat to your decision making, and. Yeah. I mean, more than anything else, it just gets you out there. I mean, honestly, you know, if it was your business, Rachel, and you've got a great network and you've got a bunch of clients out there, but if you suddenly got a piece of publicity in, say, the Times small business section on what should small businesses be doing to boost their sales or something, all of a sudden a bunch of other small businesses who are reading that would look at that and go, wow, I need to work with this woman. She's got some really good ideas. And they would get in touch with you, which they would never, ever have known you even existed, and you wouldn't have known that they existed because you can only do so much marketing yourself. Then you need to go up to the mass market level, and unless you can pay a small fortune in advertising, which most of us can't, and to be frank, I don't think it's as effective, this is the way to go.
I'm really excited now, Melissa. I want to get on with this. So in terms of getting started on it, what can I do for myself?
Right, so basically the thing about PR is it's not rocket science. It's not like you having to try and write your own web programs or anything super technical. It is something that anyone can do for themselves, but you need to know how to do it. There are ways of dealing with a journalist, and it's understanding what it is they want and what they don't want, and what it is and what it isn't. You really can do it yourself. I would advise that you read up about it. There's a lot of information out there, but it's understanding what makes news. Most people, when they hear public relations, probably think, I need to have a press release. That's probably what they think first up. And then they might go and Google, how do you write a press release? And they will then follow a template online and go, right, that's it, I've got my press release. I'll now just stick it out in the ether and see what happens. Or I'll send it to a journalist and hope that they cover it. There's a whole bunch more to it than that. It's really understanding what makes something newsworthy. Why would a journalist write about you? And it's getting an understanding about that. That is how you, if you understand that, you can do your own PR.
Yeah, I'm just out here thinking back to the times when I've tried to do this, when I've actually written a press release, and then I've gone through and contacted the press that I thought would be interested in it, and I'm just thinking that what response have I had from that? It's probably been fairly low in the past.
Yep. And the thing is, so it's a couple of things. First of all, I think what most people don't realize, well, I don't know if anyone even thinks about what a journalist does in a day, but they are extremely busy people, especially with the internet now. It used to be that a newspaper had sort of fixed deadlines that they would take, this is now we're wrapping up our stories, and this is when we go to press, and this is exactly the hours that we work to, and that's still true. But you now have 24/7 media, online breaking news stories, and they're working around the clock. Now you must imagine, if you're not a writer yourself, but imagine trying to write something. You're trying to get down a piece of information, and you have to write it factually correctly. It has to be correct. And every 2 minutes, your phone rings, and someone goes, hi, did you get my press release? Are you interested in it? I mean, it would drive you absolutely insane, wouldn't it? I mean, you would just never get any work done, especially because most of the people that are ringing up really don't have a clue that their story isn't newsworthy in the first instance, or they're targeting completely the wrong person at the publication. So it can sound a bit scary, because journalists can be a bit scary. They can put the phone down on you. They can be quite rude and abrupt. I've worked with some very seriously scary journalists in the past. I think that if you have a strong story and you have delivered it to them via email and it is compelling and you've done it correctly, you stand a far better chance of them actually getting in touch. What's more, you can now use tools like Twitter to pitch journalists, and it becomes far more immediate. So you can absolutely do it yourself, but it is worth learning a little bit about what makes something newsworthy.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And just thinking from my own experience, because my results haven't been amazing, I can see the benefit in actually getting somebody who's an expert in this field to actually support you in that. And I suppose one of the other things that I've done in business is that I've fallen into that situation where I've approached a publication and they're like, yeah, totally want you to be featured in this. And it's all great, it's guns blazing, but the deal is that you can go in the publication as long as you spend some money on their advertising budget.
Yeah.
So is there a way that you can get into media without paying for advertising?
Yes, definitely. So it depends on the publication. You will find there are plenty of magazines particularly that are free. You'll get your little local Link magazine, or you'll get, I don't know, in the parenting sector you'll have Families magazines. There's a bunch of free magazines, and the way that they make their money is through advertising. Now, I have managed to get my clients into those magazines without paying for advertising, but it's being really clever with the story. 9 times out of 10, if you, for example, run ballet classes, they will say, well, you need to advertise in our classes section, and then we might do a feature on you. And they almost insist that you pay. And those are tricky because some of them, they really do. That's how they make their money. So, that's their policy, and that's the way they work. But, things like your newspapers, whether the big nationals, your Times and Telegraphs and Guardians and Independents, or whether they are your York Press or your regionals, weeklies or dailies, they do not operate that way. They have completely independent advertising and editorial departments. And the journalists who are in the editorial department really don't give a monkey's what is going on the advertising side. They're completely different. They're not really related. They just have to write their stories. So it's about making sure that you can offer the publication a story that their readers want to read. Their readers do not want to read about the fact that you are offering a 10% discount on whatever product you have, because that's an advert. Their readers want to know that you are offering the first free colonic irrigations for people who have whatever, you know what I mean? Like that and why they might need that weird service or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like you've got to think of it from the reader's point of view. Think about what you read in the paper, what is news, and I guess that comes on to, how do you get into the newspaper or a magazine without paying? It's by having a newsworthy story, and I think it's really important to understand what makes a newsworthy story. And basically there's about 6 or 7 things. First of all, it's timing. If you have a story that is breaking today or tomorrow or has just happened, it's timely, so therefore it's newsy, it's newsworthy. If you did something 6 months ago and you contact a journalist and say, hi, I want to tell you about my whatever, and they say, great, when did that happen? And you go, 6 months ago. It's not news. It's old. It's called news for a reason. It's new. So its time is important. How significant a story is important. So, when you or I give birth to a baby, it isn't very significant and no one's going to write about it. When, the next King of England is born, the whole world's media covers it because it's significant. That's actually probably prominence. They're a famous person, therefore they're going to be featured prominently. Significant is if there's a car accident and one car bumps into another, that's not going to be a news story. If there's a multi-car pileup, it's big and it's significant, so therefore it's more newsworthy. How close something is, proximity, how close is it happening to you? So, I live in York, and so if let's say Tesco was opening a brand new superstore here in York, the York press is probably going to cover it because they're interested because it's on their doorstep. The people down south in Brighton couldn't give a monkey's, because it's got nothing to do with them. So how newsworthy it is how close it is to you. And that's a pretty big one if you're trying to do local outreach. Prominence I touched on already. It's just how famous you are. And this is quite a tricky one for people because I'm not famous, so how do I ever get in if I'm not famous? There are ways that you can do that. You can try to work with celebrities or, lots of the people in the parenting sector create products, and if celebrities happen to be using their products, they certainly use that as a PR hook. They send their products out to celebrities to try to get them to be used. There's a bunch of ways that you can do that, but basically the more prominent you are, the more likely you are to get exposure. Relevance is a really big one because it's how relevant something is to your target market. So if you are selling, eco-friendly nappies, then a mainstream newspaper or someone might not be that interested. But if you targeted a green parenting type magazine, it's going to be hugely relevant to them because it's exactly what their readers want to know about. So it's how relevant your story is to the end publication. And then finally, it's just human interest. And this is really where PR has its sort of happy space, because if you think about any news bulletin, they'll have all their hard news first, and then they'll sort of go into the slightly less important news stories, and they'll end with the "and finally" story, and there'll be something a bit quirky, funny, unusual, whatever. And they don't necessarily have to be timely or really huge or significant, but they are just interesting and different, and they know that their readers or viewers will be interested in that story. So if you take all of those bits together and start looking at what your news that you've got is, start assessing, how timely is it, how significant is it relevant to the local area, how prominent is the story to the readership, and how interesting is it, and start to really sort of relook at the news you're trying to put out, and that'll give you an idea as to are you on the right track.
And I love that you've been able to break down what actually creates a newsworthy story. But I suppose in my head I'm thinking that if I'm a small business owner in York, there's part of me that's thinking, if I'm trying to compete to like a multi-car pile-up, my story isn't of any, it's not got massive stories. So how can you create a newsworthy story if you feel as if your story is more like a bump rather than a crash?
Yeah.
How can you select something that's of a higher impact?
I would say one of the most important ways that a small business can create their own news is to become an expert. So whatever your speciality is, you become the expert on that. And then you start to be clever about looking at what else is happening out in the press, in the news, what's going on in the world around you, and being really quick to react to that news with your own expert commentary. So that's different from having your own news. So, for example, if you are launching a new package, the York press probably isn't going to write about it. If you could turn it around and show how it is affecting local York businesses, then they will be interested. Do you see the difference?
Yeah, it's like you can see that's the newsworthy story.
Yeah. So, for example, if you say, for example, let's say let's take me, okay? So let's say I'm launching a new PR packages to help small businesses in York specifically. If I went and just took that to the local paper, they're probably not going to cover it. But if I said, I've done some research, or I've looked around my market, and I've realized that we could probably go to the local council and say how many small businesses are registered or something, and say, right, we've got this much volume of the economy is coming from small businesses in York, yet no one really knows about them. Why don't they know how to tell their own PR story? I'm a PR expert, and my conclusion is that most people don't feel that they have what it takes to tell their own PR story, so I'm starting a new campaign to help York-based businesses get their stories told. All of a sudden, the York paper thinks, hey, that's quite a cool story because there's someone here supporting our local businesses. So that suddenly becomes more newsworthy. It's just how you turn the story around and make it more relevant to the people that are going to be reading the paper. When you're thinking about PR, it's not about you. it flies in the face of what I've said about telling your story, but it isn't about you and what you're wanting to tell them. It's about what the readers or the listeners are wanting to hear and read. That's what's important.
Yeah, you putting the reader at the heart of anything you put out there, isn't it?
Yeah, because the thing is, the journalists they've got a job to do. They've got to deliver on what the readers want to read. They're not there to do they're not there to tell your story and help you build your business. That's not what their job is. Their job is to tell the readers what's happening in the world around them and the stuff that they would find interesting and useful. So, there's a bunch of different ways to look at this. The other thing is that not all news is news. So if you had to go buy a women's magazine, for example, like Woman and Home or Red Magazine or something like that, if you look at those stories, there's no news. That's not news. It's not like what's happening in Israel or whatever. It's not news. It is features, and they have roundup pages within the publication. So they'll have a page on health, and they'll have a page on fashion and makeup and beauty and relationships and travel and cooking and whatever. So each of those sections is an opportunity for you to get into. It's about how you find something strong enough to convince them to cover you. So if you had a new cookery book out or something, then you could target the cooking section and say, here's my press release and images and why I think you should cover my new cookery book. That's actually news. Whereas if you didn't have a new cookery book but you were a nutritionist, you could then go and say, I've seen amongst my client base that people are cutting out sugar dramatically in their diet, and this is why I think that's either a good or bad thing. And then you take that as a feature or commentary bit to the publication. And it's not news, it's a feature. So it's understanding the difference between news and features, and really trying to use your expertise to get yourself out there.
I love it. And, everybody here is an expert in their field, and they've all got a lot to share with people who read these publications. So, what do I do right now to actually get some PR? You've really highlighted the benefits of PR. So how do I kind of make it happen?
I would say the first step that anyone who wants to do their own PR needs to do is figure out what you're trying to achieve, first of all. Start with your business goals. Like, what is it that I'm trying to do? Because that will then tell you what you should be promoting and what you should be focusing on. But assuming you know what that is, look at who you're trying to reach and really have a think about what does my target audience, what do they read? What do they watch? Where do they go to for their information? You may not know, but you can probably hazard a guess. You could probably, if, for example, if you target women who are over 40, they're not likely to be reading Look magazine. They're more likely to be reading Woman and Home magazine because it's aimed at older women. So it's sort of getting an understanding of what sort of publications your target audience are going to be consuming. I would go out to a newsagent, make it a big one, where they've got an extensive array of publications, and really have a look at them. It will depend on whether you're targeting consumers or whether you're targeting businesses, whether you're looking at trade publications or consumer publications, but really have a look and see what magazines are out there or newspapers are out there that would cover you. Start with those. You can move on to, you can do websites, you can Google websites from home without even going out and seeing which kind of websites or blogs people would be reading. And then if you go and you buy some magazines, get a stack of Post-it notes and flick through the publication and start to really look at the magazine. Don't look at the magazine like you've ever looked at a magazine before. In fact, after you do this, I'll ruin magazines for you for life because you'll never want to read another one. But what you do is you look at each section as you go through. So all of a sudden, instead of just flicking mindlessly through a magazine, you'll suddenly notice and go, there's a feature profile there on a person. Why? What are they writing about? What is the story that they're telling? Who is this person? And, sometimes it'll be a famous person, but sometimes it won't be. It'll be someone who lost their mother in a tragic accident, and they used that tragedy to help buoy them up and turn her mother's legacy into a great business idea. And it's a motivating, inspirational story, and they've got a 2-page spread in a glossy magazine as a result. So look at the type of stories that they're writing, look at the features that they're covering, look at the sections within the magazines that they're covering, and have a look. Like, say, for example, if you're a health-related business, have a look at the health section and see who is the editor in charge of that section. If they don't name them on the page, at the front or back when they have the index, they will list who all the editors are. They won't necessarily have their email addresses or telephone numbers, but they will name them, and from there you can Google them. They are almost certain to be on Twitter. You can find them and you follow them. And once you start following them, you start looking at what they're commenting on. Don't become a stalker, but sort of track what kind of things they're interested in. They will also probably put out requests saying, I'm looking for a woman who's overcome a tragedy and wants to start up a business off the back of it, that kind of story. So they'll start to put out those kind of requests. You can start to interact with them. You don't have to sell, hi, I'm so-and-so and I do such and such. Just do that sounds awesome, or retweet their stuff. Start to slowly get yourself onto their radar. They might start following you. And once you start that, you can start building a relationship with them. Don't try and conquer the entire media landscape at one go. Just choose, a couple of publications, a couple of journalists from those, and start to follow them and start to build a relationship with them. So you can do that sort of now. And while I'm on the subject of Twitter, you should be using something like TweetDeck or Hootsuite, something that enables you to manage your Twitter account more easily. And within, say, TweetDeck, you can do a search, and I would recommend everyone sort of immediately goes and puts in a search for #journo_request and create a column using that search term. And you will see a scrolling stream of requests coming in from journalists on a daily basis, sort of constantly updated, where people are putting out requests for people to talk to. Journalists need people and stories to bring their articles alive. And that's how you can help them. It's not about you trying to flog them your press release. It's about looking at what they're already writing and getting into their stories, because that's when they're going to be open to hearing from you. So look at what kind of requests they are asking for, and if you've got something relevant to contribute, then get in touch. So do that, and then similarly set up another search where you have nutrition or whatever your sector is, and you can start to see all the commentary on Twitter about that, and that in itself would start to spur story ideas, or you might start seeing trends for stories, or just get other people you can connect with. So it's really important that you start monitoring what is being said about your sector so that you have an eye on the stories that are going on that you can contribute towards. And secondly, follow the journalists that you want to influence so that you can, when you do have a story, you've already built up the relationship in advance and you sort of are far more likely to get in that way.
I love that, Melissa, because it's similar to creating a positive strategic alliance, is that rather than thinking about just selling it from your point of view, when you're actually talking, when you were talking about working with a journalist, it's kind of like looking for the win-win situation in both for you, but for the journalist as well. It's kind of like helping the journalist out. What content have you got that will actually help them out with that particular story that they're looking to create? So that is a really brilliant way of actually looking at getting yourself out there, getting over yourself, working with other people, rather than thinking, oh my God, they're a journalist and we can't possibly approach them. It's kind of like, what have you got that is actually going to help them connect their article, and obviously the win for you is to get yourself out there, increase your profile. So that's brilliant.
I mean, it's if you think about it, these people are working really hard, and let's say, for example, I have been given a story by their editor. They say, we want to discuss the latest fall fashions, okay? And you need to find out what real women are wearing this autumn. They can do their research, but ultimately they're going to want to talk to some real women about what they're wearing. So you might think, well, I am, I'm a yoga teacher, so what does it matter what I wear? It's got nothing to do with my business. Who cares? right? You get in touch with them and say, hi, I am a yoga teacher. I'm happy to talk to you about what I wear in autumn. And you could be going against the trend and say, frankly, I don't care because I'm not bothered about what I wear. Or you could be, I'm actually quite into my fashion, and this is what I always follow the fashion trends, and this is what I'm wearing. So if you feel you can contribute, they will still quote you. They will still put your name out there. And if you can ask them, if you're helping them with their story, say, yoga instructor Melanie Brown of yogastudios.com, they will potentially give you a mention. And every little bit like that helps. You start becoming useful to them, and then when you actually have a story, they will be far more willing to write about you. So it's really sort of just being prepared to put yourself out there. And I think for a lot of small businesses, that is a big thing because they don't realize that they have to be out there. They think they could hide behind their business name, but people are interested in people, and they will want to read about you, your story, your advice. And you have to be willing to do that and put yourself out there. It doesn't mean you have to sell your story to some, red top brag and it's all sleaze or anything like that, but you have to be willing to sort of say, well, this is what happened to me and this is how I fixed it, and be prepared to put yourself out there.
I love it. I think that's great. Thank you. I think you've given so much there in terms of, for us to understand what PR is, why it's different from marketing, why it's really important as a small business owner to do PR, the bits that you can do for yourself, the bits that you can work with somebody else to actually get some additional support from. And I totally love that piece that you did about using media without paying for advertising, because the advertising side of things can be so expensive and actually put you off from going out there into a publication. And then those steps that you've shared with us with regard to the newsworthy story, that's just turned it around for me. Previously I was definitely looking at it from a point of view of, being really anxious. I was talking to a journalist and just being quite corporate about my approach, which is obviously something that is difficult for somebody else to connect with. But, how you can, I love, that bit that you've just shared with us about how you can get some PR now. And I believe, Melissa, that you've actually got a short exercise that you're going to share with us that will actually really take that a little bit further and help people to get the ball rolling following this masterclass.
Well, it's really, it's basically what I've just explained. It's if you don't even want to leave your desk, go onto Twitter right now, search for #JonoRequest, and create a column and look at that immediately. Just start looking at the opportunities there and see what can I contribute towards, if anything. You might not see anything, but just keep an eye on it and you'll start to get an idea as to the type of things that journalists are asking for. It'll really open your eyes in terms of what they view as a story, and you'll see how different it is from what you believe your PR story actually is. So have a look at that, and then if you can get out, as I say, do get to a newsagent and look at magazines and go through them and really look at the sections that you can be in. Find those journalists that cover, or the editors that cover those sections, and then go find them online and start to follow them if they're on Twitter and start to build a relationship. That is really, really key. When I set up my PR business before Peekaboo Communications, I had absolutely no contacts. I'd never done consumer PR, and I didn't even know what parenting magazines they were. And I walked down to a newsagent. I bought every parenting magazine I could find, and I sat one evening with my Post-its, and I went through each magazine page by page and highlighted. I wrote down the names of all the journalists, and Twitter wasn't even really around then. And I found, I went and researched, I found their email addresses, I got the phone numbers, and I called the magazines to say, I'm trying to get the email address of such and such. And I created my press list off the back of doing that. And from there, I built an entire business. So, if I can build a PR business off doing that, honestly, an individual with their own small business can absolutely do it. They can just go and look at their sector. They'll all have magazines specific to their sector, and go and research them, find out which journalists are writing about you, and start to build a relationship with them. This is not about you selling your story. It's about you helping them tell the stories to their audience and really being a useful resource to them. And I will say that if you're working with the press, you need to be responsive. They work on very tight deadlines. If you can help them, don't send them a thing saying, hi, I can help you, and then if they get in touch, just ignore them for 3 days and then think they're going to still be interested. They want to talk to you. They're going to want to talk to you now. And the same goes for if you hear something on the radio, let's say there's a news story out that you think, gosh, I could comment on that. I'm an expert on that subject. If you want to call your local radio station and say, hey, I can hear you covering this news story, and I'm an XYZ expert, and I can absolutely provide comment, they may want to talk to you, but you need to make yourself available to do that. You can't say, well, actually, I've got a packed day of meetings, so I could do it tomorrow, because it's never going to work. They want someone, they want it now. So, go onto Twitter, start searching what journalists are wanting, find the magazines you want to be in and which journalists are covering the stories, follow them, form relationships with them, and start listening to the topical news of the day and see if you can get out there and be available to press. And honestly, you can just start from there. There's a whole bunch more you can do, but that's a really good starting point.
That is a brilliant starting point. I love those tips. I've worked with the local radio here in York, and it is very quick response, isn't it? It's kind of, this is timely now.
Yeah.
So,
it's
I
immediate.
love those tips. Yeah,
it's immediate.
Fabulous.
And you know what else? I mean, if I can take a couple of minutes just to tell you a really, really funny story. The thing is that once you, especially with local radio, once you're on there once, you're on their database for being an expert. So next time a story that's relevant happens, they're more likely to contact you directly instead of you having to contact them. So several years ago, I took part in a yacht race, and I sailed from Hull to Rio. And so I got hold of my local radio station. I told them about it, and they invited me in, and I told them all about the fact that I was going to do this. And then when I came back, I got in touch with them again, and I went back and I told them all about what it was like and how I'd seen Wales and how beautiful it was, etc. Anyway, a couple of months later, I got a call first thing in the morning from the local station going, hi, you've swum with whales, haven't you? And I was like, no. And they said, but you've seen them, right? And I was like, yeah. And they said, oh, great, because a trainer's been killed at SeaWorld, and we want to talk to people about their whale stories. We'll call you back in 15 minutes. And it was like just, okay, the phone's been put down, and I'm going to get a call back in 15 minutes. And I had my kids there. I was trying to get them off to school. It was such a nightmare. Anyway, they called me back, and this is an exact example of how PR doesn't always work. So the researcher had obviously given the presenter my name, and so the presenter goes, hi, Melissa, you're talking to us today about your whale story. So what is it? And I was like, in my head, I didn't have a whale story. You contacted me. So I was thinking with my PR hat on, how can I possibly turn this around? Anyway, so I started to tell them a sort of random story about how we'd seen whales and how lovely it was, and they were like, like waiting for the big sort of payoff. And I was like, there wasn't anything else to tell them, and there was just this silence on the radio, and I ended up making whale noises on the telephone, live on radio, sort of mimicking what a whale sounded like. So it probably really wasn't the highlight of my sort of PR career, but the point was that the researcher had my details, and when they had a story break, the first person they called was me, because I'd been there twice and I'd spoken to them already and I'd delivered the goods. So if you can get yourself out there, hey, you're more likely to get out there again and again and again.
And especially if you can make some whale noises, it's very, very memorable.
Oh, yeah.
I love that, Melissa. The things you do to fill in the space, isn't it? It's great. I love it. Oh, Melissa, that has been absolutely fantastic. You have shared so much and really allowed myself and the audience to really understand from a small business point of view what is PR and why we should be using it. And I'm committed to this. I've used PR in the past, but this is like the next level really. So that has been brilliant. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your expertise with us, Melissa, today.
Well, I'm hoping that, what I've covered here it's been a sort of snapshot, but I know that it's daunting. It's not impossible to do at all, but it is daunting if you don't really know what you're supposed to be doing, especially if you contact a journalist and then they say, oh, well, send me a press release, and then you've not any idea how you're supposed to do that. And then when you send a press release, you think, well, what am I supposed to send with that, and how am I supposed to do it? And there's all these other questions that sort of pop up into your head. So I am, and I hope I can tell you this, but I'm running an online course that will help small businesses do exactly this. It teaches them exactly how to go and do all of the stuff in PR, all the stuff that's in my head that I've learned for 20 years. It's sort of put down on paper in very practical, simple terms so that people can figure out how to do it themselves with some really sort of good questions at the end of each section so that they can sort of answer the questions as they go along, so that by the end of it, they've got a full working PR plan that they can just take out and hit the ground running. So that might be of interest to some people out there as well if they're still not feeling 100% confident.
But yeah, I think it's brilliant to be able to look at this in a much more in-depth way and to really get under the skin of it. So in terms of people connecting with you after this interview, Melissa, what's the best way for people to connect with you, to find out more about what it is that you do, more about what you've just shared with us? How can people do that?
Probably the best bet is to go to my website, which is www.campfirecommunications.co.uk. So it's Campfire, as in a campfire, and communications with an S at the end, .co.uk. And they can find out all the information on there.
That's brilliant, Melissa. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time today. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
You're welcome. It's been great.
This has been Rachel Smith, Business Grower. Goodbye until the next masterclass. Bye for now.